Hi everyone, Mark Alexander here. I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're having a great life. I hope that all of your loved ones are well. So, as you know, I haven't been very productive on my Creating Your Life channel or my Patreon in the last 3 years, and partially that's because I've been involved in a nonprofit organization volunteering, and it's been just taking a lot of my time. And it's work I really love. It involves serving others, and it's something I love to do. And as many of you know, writing is a challenging thing to do. Even though it tends to come a little easier for me than some, it's still a lot of work to come out with products and stuff. And I just want to show you, these are the books that I've been talking about developing. The first four I've created: Creating Your Life, Money and Wealth, Sex and Romance, Mozart and Great Music. And I have plans for all these others, and I still do when I have the time. But because it's been taking a lot longer than I expected, because my hope was to get out at least a book a year, I thought what I could do instead is on my Patreon, start creating some videos where I touch on different topics for each of these, so that you can get some of this content before it actually gets to the point of publication. And heck, who knows? Maybe the videos will help give me the more of the content that makes it easier to write. So, for example, I'm putting this under the umbrella of high performance creativity because, in a sense, that's what this is all about: how to think different, how to improve your life. And I hope some of you are actually who've watched my videos, read my books, have actually had some dramatic improvements. And by the way, in the comments below, please leave me stories about give me the feedback that lets me know that this is worthwhile. I do get some, and I appreciate it, and I especially appreciate people on my Patreon who support some of this and have had some interesting stories. What I would like to do is I'd like to create videos that kind of jump around. So, for example, maybe my first video would be on Mozart and great music. And part of the joy that comes there is this idea that there is music that just by listening to it and closing your eyes can actually bring you into heavenly states of consciousness. And I want to outline that. But I also want to talk about Shakespeare and literature and what the difference is between a lot of what people call literature today versus the classics. And in most cases, not all, but in most cases, the classics are the classics for a reason. So I want to make the case for why Shakespeare is great. And occasionally I may throw in something in there about the authorship issue because I'm definitely a heretic on that. Not that I set out to be, I kind of stumbled into it and went, wait a minute, there's actually some good evidence here. And that kind of relates back to Creating Your Life, and where I talk about blind spots and how especially people who have labeled themselves experts or who think they know the absolute truth, can create blind spots to that truth. So all of these books are interconnected, and there's a reason why I do these in order. I also want to address Socrates in ancient Greece. Part of that is just people just do not know, if they haven't studied ancient Greece, how relevant it is today. It's amazing. Particularly Socrates, and what makes Socrates great, and why Socrates is a lot like Shakespeare. And also that Shakespeare is a lot like Mozart, that there are these interconnections that people don't realize until they've explored what the people who do great works have in common. Language and rhetoric. I've already done some of that, especially with the underground grammarian. But a lot of people don't fully understand what rhetoric is or how important definitions are to language. And I would explore that more deeply. Vice and virtue, right and wrong. What leads you forward in life? What takes you away from living a full and creative life? Law and liberty. What is the language of the law, and what does it have to do with liberty? What's the difference between liberty and freedom? How do you know when laws are good? Are there such things as spiritual laws? Are there such things as natural laws? Laws that exist, whether or not humans are aware of it or whether or not they follow it, or write their laws to align with these more universal things. We'll talk about that there. Science and truth. Boy, that's relevant today. how do you know what is true when people are talking about science? What is science really? Um, I love quoting Richard Feynman. Science is the belief in the ignorance of experts and the danger of following scientific experts. What you can do to increase, especially in terms of understanding people's language and rhetoric, you can understand also how you can just tell by the way people talk whether or not they adhere to a kind of truth. Do they have ethics in science, for example? Training and education, very, very important these days. What's the difference between training and education? What does education mean? How can you tell good education from bad? How can you tell a good teacher from a bad teacher? Whether or not they know it, there are people who unconsciously and consciously will actually not give you an education. They'll do the opposite. And so those are areas that I love exploring. And then finally, soul and spirit. Are we souls with a body or bodies with a soul? Is there such thing as soul and spirit? How would you know? It's not something that submits to science. So what kind of ways can you go about trying to find out for you if such things are real, and how you can connect to it and have personal experience and guidance from that? That's my aim overall, is to create a series of videos that kind of jump around into different topics. But the core of this would be your response. So I'm going to put this in Patreon. This particular introduction, I'm going to also put on YouTube to let people know. And if you like a video, by liking it, and by commenting on it, or even give me other comments, steer me. What are you interested in? What would you like to see me do? What would you like to hear me comment on? Since these tend to be progressive in the sense that, one after the other, they build on each other, I would tend towards the earlier ones first, and then the later ones. But give me some ideas of what interests you. If you respond and like a video, then I know, hey, I'm going to do more of that. If you would like to direct me and say, hey, I'd like to hear you talk about this, I'm happy to do that as well. Patreon, my Patreon is really simple. It's like $1, $3, $5 members. At the $1 level, you can get all these videos. That I'm going to make it available for all Patreon members. I'm not going to restrict by tiers. And occasionally I may do a video that I'll put up on YouTube as well, if it's something I think works well in that format. So this is my plan. It's something that I hope that you like. I hope it's an idea that that you're into. And if you ever want to talk about what's in my room, I can talk about this too. This is one of my two libraries. I have a library upstairs, which is pretty extensive, and then this, and someday if you want, I can even take the video up and just kind of walk you through what I have behind me, because I'm a big believer in books and DVDs for movies and CDs, because the internet goes down, and more and more they're trying to pull everything into the internet, and I want my stuff available. I don't want to have to always go to get online. Um, and the last thing before I go, and then try to think about what I'm going to do with these videos, the last thing is this: we live in a world that can suck your energy in so many different ways. There's stuff that's within our control, and then there's a lot more stuff that is outside our control, and you know this. But here's the thing, especially if you're going to live a life of high performance creativity. Remember, creativity has a lot to do with what you create, with what you produce. And you need energy, time, focus, and just a desire, a vision to be able to create things. Be aware, and my suggestion, this comes from a dear friend of mine, pay attention to what you let into your eyes and ears and your mouth and nose, whatever you let in and what goes out. What comes in affects you, as you know. It could be food, obviously, but I'm talking more about ideas and the news and that kind of thing. Watching the news these days can suck you dry, and it can, set up those hamster wheels of the minds that I talk about in creating your life. It can interfere with your sleep. If you want to be a productive, creative person and you want to have more joy in your life, which I think more people do than realize, limit the amount of attention you put on news. Pay attention to what you're letting in and how it affects you. And that if, I turn off the news. I don't watch the news. I watch a few things here and there. I have my sources where if I want information, but it's hard to tell a lot of these days what is actually worthwhile information and what builds you up versus tearing you down. Anything that instills fear and anxiety. There are a lot of people who make a lot of money off of fear and anxiety. Are you letting those people into your life? Do you allow that energy to get into you? What I'm saying is you're in charge of that. There's a lot of things you're not in charge of. There's a lot of things you can't control, but you can control your responses. Remember, in creating your life, it doesn't matter what happens to you. What matters is how you respond. So I'm suggesting, as one way of working this, if you want more energy in your life, more rest, lesser anxiety, and more sleep, unplug from any source of information or ideas or news that puts you in a state of anxiety and fear. I'll tell you, as I mentioned before, why are insurance companies so wealthy, and banks and pharmaceuticals and so many other of these big industries? Because most of what you fear never happens. Over 95% of what you fear never happens. And as you know from creating your life, you could buy into ideas that actually make you sick, that'll make you into something that profits other people. So part of this video is trying to empower you, encourage you, bring more joy in your life, showing you how you are more in charge of your life than you realize. Okay? These are not going to be highly produced videos. It's just going to be me mostly talking. I'm not going to always have a lot of graphics and stuff. Occasionally, maybe I may even have a section where my music, the music I've created, hey, I could create a little music video with nice images here and there and upload that for your enjoyment. But let me know what you want. Let me know what you've read of mine that you really think I could explore more, or ideas I haven't touched on yet. And I'll be happy to create a channel that's for my Patreon members. And I love you all. Thank you for your help. Thank you for your support. And I hope to see you. Take care. Bye-bye.